bringing the people behind our food to life.
So say I'm one of the non-hungry 88%, why should I worry about the problem?
Americans should worry about hunger not only because of the moral reasons, and not only because every single religious denomination has fighting hunger and poverty as a central tenet of that religion, but for very self-interested reasons. As long as we have 36.2 million Americans who can't afford adequate diets, that's going to drag down the entire American economy. Look, poor people in American society have been the grass. We all depend on grass as the baseline of a photosynthesis system. Elephants, cattle, whoever eat that grass. When the grass is trampled on so much it dies, all life dies. If the workers in this society, the poorest people, doing our hardest, most difficult, sometimes most necessary jobs, picking our food, taking care of our children, taking care of our parents. If those kind of people don't earn enough to feed their families, this entire society is headed for collapse. And we're seeing the beginning of this. I actually wrote in my book a year and a half ago that the last time we saw this much inequality of wealth was 1929, and we know what happened after that. I don't think I'm particularly a soothsayer for saying there was going to be economic collapse. The bottom line is when you have a lot of people at the top making simply paper money, they're not producing anything, they're just moving money around, and you have a lot of people at the bottom doing, if I may say so, the real work of society, cleaning our bathrooms, building our roads, staffing our cafeterias, and they're not earning enough to buy goods and services, they're not earning enough to feed their families. This society as a whole is in big trouble. So sure, people should care about hunger for moral reasons. Sure, people should care about hunger for religious reasons, but people should also care about hunger because it's dragging down our entire economy, them included.
Talk to me about the impact.
Hunger costs American society $90 billion a year in lost wages, lost educational performance, and increased healthcare spending. Hungry people or malnourished people, some of whom become obese, have far higher rates of heart disease, far higher rates of diabetes, far higher rates of hypertension. All those cost American society billions and billions and billions of dollars a year.
Why can't our country solve a problem that is as basic as hunger? What is stopping us? What's the fatal flaw?
Other countries have an excuse why they have hunger. They have drought, they have low agricultural productivity, they had colonialism, they had civil wars, they had dictators. America has none of those excuses. We have the greatest agricultural productivity in the history of the world. The reason we have hunger is we have mass inequality of wealth, and tens of millions of Americans don't earn enough money to buy all the food they need.
Some would say, well, we have a system in place. We have a safety net in place.
America is far better off with the nutrition assistance safety net. As I document in my book, All You Can Eat, How Hungry is America, we had far more hunger in America before we had the safety net that was created in the 60s and 70s. In fact, in the late 1970s, when the nutrition safety net was more robust, we almost entirely ended hunger in America. A, because the safety net was stronger, and B, because we had living wage jobs. In the 1970s, if you were working full-time, you may still have been marginally poor, but you weren't hungry. That's not the case today. We've gone backwards since the 1980s. Living wage jobs have been replaced by service sector jobs, and the safety net, not just for food, but for housing, for health care, for child care, for education, has been chipped away at. And we went from just a few hundred feeding agencies in the 1970s that fed mainly homeless people in skid rows of America. Today there are more than 40,000 soup kitchens and food pantries in America, serving tens of millions of Americans, most of whom are working families, children, senior citizens, people with disabilities. Some conservatives say that's a major success of the armies of compassion. I say it's a major failure because these agencies are only providing a small percentage of what the federal safety net should be providing.
You use the analogy of, as communities, how we gathered together and how we used to fight, say, a house fire with a bucket brigade.
Yes.
To share that with the people, because it seemed to make perfect sense to me that here is a role for government.
In America and big cities, we used to fight fires one bucket at a time through bucket brigades. They made us feel great. They were the faith-based armies of compassion of their time. You didn't need a big government program. You didn't need a big bureaucracy. You didn't have to spend a lot of tax dollars on these bucket brigades. They only had one eensy-weensy little problem. They didn't work. City after city after city burnt to a crisp. Yet today, we've sold America on the myth that today's bucket brigades can somehow solve a massive problem of hunger, which impacts 36.2 million Americans. Instead of buckets today, we try solving the problem one can at a time, one Cub Scout canned food drive at a time. Trying to end hunger in America with canned food drives is like trying to fill the Grand Canyon with a teaspoon. It has not and will not work. Yes, we need charity. Yes, we need a strong nonprofit sector to fill in the gaps and do certain things government can't do as well. But the lead needs to come from the federal government. They have the money, they have the scope, and because their elected officials were elected by the people, they have legitimacy self-selected nonprofit groups do not have. As a practical matter, if we want to end this problem, government has got to take the lead. All charitable food distributed in America equals maybe $2 or $3 billion worth of food to help 32 million people who are hungry. In contrast to the $2 billion worth of food distributed by charities, the federal government this year is going to spend more than $65 billion on the Federal Nutrition Assistance Safety Net, school lunch, school breakfast, the WIC program, food stamps. So right now, the federal government is spending more than 30 times what private charities are. And often the food given out by private charities is funded by government. So when you hear conservatives or good-hearted people say that, gee, we ought to have community do it instead of the government, A, they don't understand how much the government's doing already, and B, they don't understand in relative terms just how little charities are doing. People say to me, Joel, why are you so supportive of the government doing this? Why not let the community solve the problem? And I remind people that in a democracy, government is the embodiment of community. I run a nonprofit group, the New York City Coalition Against Hunger. It's an excellent organization, but I was picked by a board of 9 people. They're fine, upstanding citizens, but no one elected them from the community. No one elected me. Whatever you think of your governors, county commissioners, mayors, presidents, senators, they were elected by the people, and it's their job to marshal collective will on behalf of our communities, and it's their job to do things like end hunger. I start many of my hunger talks by talking about how we wiped out yellow fever, cholera, and malaria in America. These were massive diseases that swept through America continually. Cholera was so vast a problem that in New York City, it killed the equivalent of 100,000 people a year today. And yet government took the lead in wiping out diseases like cholera by building municipal water systems to bring in water. If we, as collective citizens, ended problems like cholera, yellow fever, and malaria, we can certainly end hunger today if we just have the leadership and the grassroots support necessary to do so.